Thanks, Rabbi. And I'm the sandwich between Dov Hikind and Rabbi Sherman. I'm the sandwich in between. But I can't tell you how emotionally positive I am with this crowd tonight. To see a full house, the two stalwarts of the community, one from New York, one from down here in Florida, who are coming here and telling us the truth about for whom we should vote in 2020. This is, to me, this is a mind-blowing event, and I thank you, and every single one of you are the heroes here tonight. But there's a little story with Rabbi Sherman. Rabbi Sherman sent me last week his biography, and I read it, extensive biography, Lieutenant Colonel in Operation Desert Storm, Lieutenant Colonel in battle, and I appreciate that because when I got out of service, I was a PFC, so I humbly do that. But he sends me his bio, and I read it thoroughly. Huge bio, 5 pages. And I see at the very end, he served as a rabbi in Bluefield, West Virginia. How many of you have ever heard of Bluefield, West Virginia? Well, my brother lived in the town adjacent to Bluefield, Athens. He was a college professor in Little Duty Hole College, Concord College, in West Virginia. And he put down the dates he served as a rabbi there. And I called up my sister-in-law, and I said, June, do you remember this rabbi? She said, well, vaguely. She calls up her son. He says, Rabbi Sherman bar mitzvahed me. So, out of the blue, not only have I a friend here, now for life, and a conservative friend, conservative Jewish friend, but I have a guy who's part of the mishpacha. He bar mitzvahed my son. The only thing is, I have 2 complaints with Rabbi Sherman's sermon. Number 1, he used the term anti-Semitic. That's how. It's Jew-hating. Anti-Semitism is a general term. It's generic. It could be I hate Arabs, I hate what have you. Jew-hating is specific, to the point. It says, it gets the meaning right away. So I don't use anti-Semitism. And then he said something about Ted Deutsch and Lois Frankel. Now, Ted Deutsch sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, right next door to Ilhan Omar, right next to Ilhan Omar, right next to this Jew-hating Muslim who wants us destroyed, who is starting another Holocaust in this country today. She is part of the beginning of a Holocaust against the Jews in this country today. And Ted Deutsch says nothing. He's mealy-mouthed, he's weak, to me, he's nothing. In fact, last month I sent him a challenge. I sent it out to the media, I sent it out to the Republican Party. I challenged Ted Deutsch to a debate on Jewish issues. I said, let us debate. I, a humble citizen who is a nobody, and you, a vaunted House member and head of a committee. He's head of the Ethics Committee in the House of Representatives. He didn't respond. I want him to respond, and I want to be on this stage. We'll pay for it. This club will pay for it. I want to challenge Ted Deutsch, one-on-one, mano-a-mano, about which party is better for the Jewish people. His party, the Democrats, mine. I've gotten no response. He is hiding behind the media. He's hiding behind the people who support him. I want him out. So if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows Ted Deutsch, pass the word that I would love very much to debate him on the issues. I'm a nobody, and he's a congressman. But Rabbi Sherman, I thank you very much. It is my fervent hope that you will continue with us.
I will.
We need that. Okay. And now on to our next speaker. The next speaker is Dov Hikind. We are so fortunate and blessed to have this New Yorker who represented Borough Park for 35 years in the Assembly, the New York State Assembly. He's a Democrat. He's a Democrat. But wait a second. I don't give a damn. He is speaking out to the 80% of the Jews in his community who vote Democrat. He is a guide to them. He is a leader to them. He is a beacon to them. He is a searchlight to them. He is going to focus on why Jews, in particular, as well as Christians, should vote for President Trump. The Golan Heights, the settlements, the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. Ted Deutsch has said bupkis That means nothing. He has said not one word in support of President Trump for doing this. The Iran deal, Ted Deutsch is for the Iran deal. Ted Deutsch, to me, nice guy, I know him for years, is worthless as a representative. It's shameful that I live within his district. Shameful that I have to sit down and get letters from Ted Deutsch on my computer telling me what he has done. He has done nothing for Christians, he has done nothing for Jews. When the Christian kids from Covington, Kentucky were lambasted because they were Christians and they stood up against the black Israelites who were Jew-hating, the press destroyed them. They mollified them, they destroyed them. Ted Deutsch said nothing. And when Judge Kavanaugh was in the Inquisition for the Supreme Court position, the Inquisition, Kamala Harris, who just dropped out of the race, sort of shamed him. She said, how could you be a Supreme Court justice when you're a member of the Knights of Columbus? In other words, because you're a Christian, you can't be a member of the Supreme Court? No one said a word. And she got away with it because she's a black woman. What can I tell you? So my concern is that we have Rabbi Sherman here, and we have Dov Hikind here. And I'll tell you a story about Dov Hikind. Dov Hikind was a member of the JDL, Jewish Defense League. When I spoke with him, and I'm honored to speak with him, I dug into my sock drawer where I hide my valuables, and I came up with my JDL ring from 1968, and I have it here. My JDL ring, I was a Maya Kahana supporter back in 1968, and blessed be his memory, I still am a supporter of his, because what he said came true. He was a prophet, and I still follow him. So, without further ado, I don't want to take any more of the time. You're not here to listen to me. Dov Hikind, we are blessed to have him. Please, be nice to me.
Boy, what a great crowd. First, I am absolutely delighted to be here. A couple of months ago when I received the invitation, I instinctively just said yes. I wanted to be here. I didn't know exactly, what being here meant, but I wanted to be here. And being here tonight, just in the past 40 minutes, and meeting wonderful people, sweet, warm, passionate people, I'm so happy that I'm here. But before, let me just introduce my partner, my best friend. If not for her, I would not have gotten here tonight because she was sitting in the front seat, guiding me. Stop, go, half a mile, right turn, left turn. I just want to introduce the most amazing person that I've ever met. We've been together for 45 years. My wife from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Shani Hikind. Shani, Susan. So, let's get down to what we call tapas, which is business, bottom line. Let me explain to you where I come from, and I don't mean geographically. I have spent my entire life standing up and fighting against racism, against Jew hatred, against anti-Semitism, going back to the days of the Jewish Defense League. When as a kid, I found out that there were 3 million of my brothers and sisters who were locked behind the Iron Curtain. And I remember, Rabbi Kahana talking about love a fellow Jew, and that all those people were my family. And as a young kid, I took it seriously. If someone is part of my family, what do you not do for a member of your family? So I went out there, and that's a long story in itself that will be a number of chapters in the book that I'm writing. I was out there in the streets, training myself to the Soviet mission. I even went to the Soviet Union in 1973 to protest in Moscow. Got thrown out of the country, put on a plane to Istanbul. But the idea was, the philosophy that I have, and I'm sure you feel the same way, I'm sure you're no different. My philosophy all my life is that we need to do. We need to try to make a difference, whatever the issue is, whatever the problem is. It is not incumbent upon us to solve the problems of the world. We'll leave that to God. But it is incumbent upon us to do whatever we can when there is an issue. When someone else is in pain, when someone is faced with difficulty, when someone is faced with challenges, we need to be there. So where do I come from? Who am I that I've spent my life? And I'm living through the past year where things are out of control in this country in terms of anti-Semitism. Something I have never seen before, 36 years in the New York State Legislature. I was out there many times, press conferences against hate. But what's going on now? It's a whole different story, and we'll talk about that. But I come from a family where in 1944, my mother lived in Czechoslovakia. She described her neighbors as being wonderful, her non-Jewish neighbors, never had problems, got along with everybody. And one day, they came knocking on the door. You've read it in the books, you've seen it in films, but I'm talking about my mother now. I'm talking about her mother, brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces, little kids that ended up on a cattle car and were taken to Auschwitz. Many of them died on the train before they ever were able to get off the train. That's reality. That's what happened to our people. And when they got to Auschwitz, and my wife and I were there a couple of years ago, to actually see where my mother stood, where she walked, and the story of how my grandmother and other members of the family, and one sister in particular who was on that line, live or die. Someone was there to decide whether you were going to live or die. And if you were going to live, it wasn't going to be for that long, because they would work you to death. They'd starve you to death. They'd experiment on you. One of my mother's sisters, my mother used to tell this story all the time later in life. One of her sisters, who was on that line with thousands of other Jews, said to the family in Yiddish, "Mekenne schlossen Mamin gein allein." That means we can't let mother go alone. So this sister of 19 years old joined her mother and went straight to the gas chamber, along with my grandmother, along with nephews and nieces, and so on and so forth. So that's where I come from. That's my reality. And the only crime that was committed by 6 million of our people, the only crime, the only thing people were guilty of, the only thing little children, little babies, pregnant mothers, elderly people, it didn't matter if you were 90, 80, 75, it didn't matter. But because of Jew hatred that got out of control, we know what happened. 10,000, 15,000 Jews murdered every single day, 365 days a year. I'm not exaggerating. This is what happened. This is what happened to our people, and it didn't happen suddenly. It wasn't like they started murdering Jews immediately. No, there was a process. It started with "you effing Jew." It started with swastikas. It started with breaking windows in Jewish stores. It started with punching a Jew in the face. It started with all kinds of attacks upon individuals whose only crime was that they were Jews. And it ended up because no one did anything. Because, unfortunately, I could spend hours with you going through that part of history. It is so sad, not just what the Nazis did, but the rest of the world that stood by and didn't do what they could have done to save the lives of children, of babies, of mothers and fathers. The reality is unbelievable. The story of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who is considered one of the greatest presidents of the 20th century, we know today, not based on what Dov Hikind has to tell you. Look at the history books, one after the other. Look at the documents that have been released through the archives of the United States. You know, many things are archived and you don't know exactly what happened for 30, 40, 50 years later, and then you find out some of the reality that went on in life. And we know today that Franklin D. Roosevelt was not a friend of the Jewish people. He was playing Jewish leaders. The opportunities that there were to save Jews, not people who are trying to get into this country because they want to improve their economic situation, be that as it may. They want to earn more money. They want to have a better education. No. We're talking about a period of history where if you did not help, those people were going to die. Those people were going to be murdered. And that's exactly what happened. That is precisely what happened. And a lot of people today, don't bother me about the Holocaust. Enough already with the Holocaust. As the time moves on, we have Holocaust deniers. You know, it wasn't 6 million, maybe it was 100,000. Many of them died of disease during war. People died. Terrible things happened during war. But never in the history of the world has there been a plan to systematically, efficiently, very efficiently, they did things very efficiently. You know, the Germans were sometimes angry at other countries in Eastern Europe who had no problem murdering their Jews. The Germans were sometimes upset that some of the other, whether it was Ukrainians, sometimes Poles, they were upset because some of those other nationalities, they were murdering Jews too. Not a problem. Germans had no problem getting rid of Jews, but they were too messy. They were murdering Jews in the streets, you know, blood all over the place. It's messy. You got to keep it quiet. So that is a chapter of history that God forbid that we should forget. God forbid that we should not remember what the world is capable of doing, right? We live in a world where people are capable of doing things that each and every one of you here would say to me, impossible. No one can be so cruel. No one can be so brutal. It's impossible to pack 1,000 people into a gas chamber, have them all undressed completely, totally, telling them you're going to get a shower, mothers holding their babies, mothers holding their children. I mean, this is the reality. This is what happens. And then you close, and we're talking now about ordinary Germans. We're not talking about the Hitlers and the Goebbels and the Eichmanns and on, the Himmlers. We're talking about regular people who had families at home, who had dogs at home, and cats and birds, and took very good care of them. They were very concerned about their animals, but had no problem participating in the course of the day in the annihilation of men, women, and children. We live, and I'm so happy to be here, because I know that I am in a room tonight with every one of you. You love the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. No question about it. So no country is perfect. No person is perfect. Only God is perfect. Right? The rest of us, we strive and work to be better. We live in a great, great country. Something has gone wrong. Something is amiss. We have a very dangerous situation. Something I have never seen in my life. 36 years in the legislature, I told you before, yeah, I was out there fighting hate. But now we have the situation, and it's a problem all over the country. But think about this. The place in this country that anti-Semitism is worse than any other of the 49 states, is liberal, progressive New York. Is that like, what a contradiction. Liberal, progressive New York, anti-Semitism over the past year. You look at the FBI statistics, you look at the New York City Police Department statistics, you look at the ADL statistics. We have never had anything like this. We have never had a situation that exists today in the tri-state area. Jews being assaulted for no reason. You've seen the videos, you've seen the pictures, you've seen the things going on. A Jew walking, a Jew who is identifiably Jewish. And some person comes over to him. Most of the time, we know who those people are because we have video surveillance. We see what they look like. We see the color of their skin. We see exactly what's going on. We're not blind, we're not stupid. We see who's perpetrating almost all the acts of hate in New York. Walking over to people and just belting them in the head. The fear that is created, the panic that is created, incident after incident after incident. And if you look at the statistics, you say, oh my God. But it's even worse than that. The American Jewish Committee did a study about 2 months ago, where they found that 80% of people do not even report the incidents. It's not going to matter. And you know what? In New York these days, you've got to kill somebody or you've got to maim somebody to end up in jail. Otherwise, you're out much faster than the person gets out of the hospital who was beaten up while he was being called an effing Jew. It's out of control. And the incredible thing is, look, I know that we'll always have hate. I understand we'll always have anti-Semitism. I get it. I mean, you know, people are people, and there will always be people who will indulge in that. So I'm not talking about solving the problem, but I'm talking about addressing the problem. I'm talking about dealing with the problem. What's your plan? You're the mayor? You're the governor? What are you doing? What's the plan? They're attacking people in your city. You got elected to be mayor, governor, whatever else your position is. What are you going to do about it? And whether it's Mayor de Blasio or Governor Cuomo, they did nothing for literally a full year. So surprise, surprise, it's out of control. Out of control. I met someone 2 weeks ago. I went to a father-grandfather event for my grandson at a yeshiva, one of the finest schools in Lawrence, New York. Beautiful event, Orthodox school. And a man comes over to me. Never met this man before. This story will tell you everything. Comes over to me. He's there learning with his son. Never met this guy, never spoke to him. He says, can I talk to you for a minute? And he's sort of cowering. He sort of feels embarrassed. And he says to me, you know, I've been working for 15 years in Manhattan. 15 years I'm working in Manhattan. I wear yarmulke. I'm an Orthodox Jew. What's the problem? He says to me, yesterday, we spoke on January 1st, so the day before. He says, yesterday was the first day I took my yarmulke off when I went to New York because I was afraid. What is going on? Jews afraid in America? Jews afraid in New York to wear a yarmulke? What do you tell the kids? We're going to tell all of our kids, don't wear a yarmulke? We're going to tell all of our kids, I met this beautiful young lady here who's wearing this beautiful Star of David, like triplet, whatever you call that. You're going to take off your Star of David? And I meet people all the time. I even meet people in Florida who say, you know, when I go certain places, you know, I take it off. I push it away. What's going on? What is happening? And the problem is, you know, the people who hate, the haters, the ones who went into Jersey City, into that Hasidic grocery store, and shot a 24-year-old, I know the family for many years. They shot this young, beautiful gentleman whose only crime was that he was a Jew. They shot him 32 times. 32 times. What kind of hate do you have in your heart that you took the 32 times? Okay, Police officer, innocent person who risked his life. A couple of people murdered only because they were Jews. Okay, what happens next? I assume that these stories reach you all the way here in Florida because they're incredibly outrageous. You have a member of the Jersey City Board of Education. You hear what I'm telling you? A member of the Board of Education, not some riffraff in the street, not some uneducated person who doesn't know better, so what do you expect? No, a member of the Board of Education of Jersey City comes out with an entire long Megillah long speech, which he basically blames the Jews themselves for what happened. Basically says that, her name is Terrell Page, P-A-I-G, basically says that these two murderers, by the way, that we just found out from the FBI in the last 24 hours, had enough explosives in their van to blow up the distance of 3 stadiums. Okay? That just came out from the FBI. So this woman from the Board of Education says these two murderers, the man and the woman, they had a message, they had a point, there was an issue. What? What do you expect from individuals in the street who express their hatred when you have a member of the Board of Education? And the next thing that happened was, thank God, people like myself, you know, we have this organizations, Americans Against Anti-Semitism, which is getting support all over this country. And let me tell you, non-Jews are our biggest supporters all over America. Yes, yes. So what happens? The mayor of Jersey City, Governor Murphy, New Jersey, the governor of New Jersey, come out, this person must resign. How can you have this person being an educator who thinks the murder of innocent people, that there's some justification, there's some explanation? You know, they shouldn't have murdered them, but you know, they had a point, and we gotta have that discussion. 5 members, 5 elected officials from the Hudson County Black Democratic Caucus came out in support of the member of the Board of Education. And would you believe, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not making this up, they had a vigil for her last week to show support. So what do you expect? And unfortunately, all this is coming from the Democratic Party. You know, I want what's best for this country. I am a very proud Jew, but I love this country and I love the people of this great country. But the stuff that's going on, the bad people I get. But when you have so-called decent people in the Democratic Party who watch the behavior of a member of Congress like Tlaib, or Omar, or AOC, and so many other things that are going on in the Democratic Party, and they get a pass. They get a free ticket out of jail. They can indulge in. You're wondering why there's so much hatred? It's a combination of everything. When you have these people in the Democratic Party who are permitted to indulge in vile anti-Semitism, the Benjamins, oh my God. You know, that plays on social media. Young people pick up on it. What goes on social media, oh my God. I mean, we love to go on our little computers. It is the greatest thing in the world, right? And it's also one of the most dangerous things in the world, what goes on. The hate that is expressed. You can hate anonymously. You can say anything in the world just about, and I don't even know your name. I don't know where you live. I don't know who you are. You can just say anything you want and it spreads. And it results in things like what happened in Muncie. Imagine, Jewish family, rabbi, you saw the pictures, they're lighting Hanukkah menorah in USA, America, our great country in Muncie. And this guy walks in with a knife, a butcher knife, with the purpose of killing as many people as he could, and changes the life of all the people that were wounded that day. They will never be the same. When they put their head on the pillow at night, I can't even imagine what they're going to be going through forever and ever. You know, for many of us, it's a statistic, right? We go on to the next incident and the next incident. But the people who live this, they live with this for the rest of their life. And the communities, the families, the mothers and the fathers of these communities that I speak to, I walked those streets. The night of the Muncie stabbing, I was sitting in a pizza store. We were babysitting some of our kids. Our daughter was in Israel with the rest of the family. It was 10:30 at night. And word came over my phone that a dozen people had been stabbed. I was enjoying 3 of our grandchildren. I didn't want to go anywhere, really. I didn't want to schlep from Lawrence to like an hour and a half, 2 hours to Muncie. But I had no choice. I left the grandchildren with Shani, and I headed to that community. Oh my God. Things are out of control. When you have, I don't know Dutch, but I do know the Democratic Party. The Democrats within the party, whether it's, you know, Schumer, Senator Schumer, all of his life. Look, I'm not, you know, I'm telling it to you like it is. When you have someone like Senator Schumer, one of the most powerful people in this country, he's the minority leader of the Senate. Okay? Well, this is a serious guy, right? He cares, he's very serious about impeaching the president, right? He wants only justice. He only wants to do the right thing. He's full of it. So, Schumer, all of my life, every speech I've ever had listened to, in every synagogue, community center, this is his routine. He says to the crowd, "My name is Schumer." Do you know what Schumer means? Schumer comes from the word, he says this by the way, shomer, which is a Hebrew word that means watcher. And Chuck Schumer for 25 years is telling everybody in the world, I am the Shomer Yisrael. I am the watcher of the Jewish people. Where the hell is he when Jews are being attacked every single day? That's the issue with the Democratic Party. That's the issue with the Democratic Party. Or guys like Nadler, and you can go on and on and on. The silence of the Democratic Party. Angle, you can look, the list is pretty long. It's the double standard that exists. And this is what's so, sadly there are so many of our people in the front lines undermining the president. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our president. We see what's going on. You know, the last Democratic debate, and I try not to watch those debates, because after you've watched one, if you're interested in being bored, you watch the debate and you'll be bored. But the last debate, not the one last night, we sat for 2.5 hours, my wife and I, watching the debate, for one reason. It was right after Jersey City. Americans had just been murdered. A community had been destroyed. And I was watching that debate, waiting, hoping, praying that they were going to discuss the issue of anti-Semitism in this country. And you know, it never happened. In fact, let me tell you how bad it is. The hypocrisy of the Democratic Party these days. At the end of the debate, they talked about violence. I got excited. Shani, they're going to talk about antisemitism. They're talking about violence. And the question was about violence against transgender people. And you know, there shouldn't be any violence against anybody. But that's all they did. They never touched anti-Semitism. And since then, it's gotten worse than ever. We just had a rally in New York with 25,000 people. Everyone has started talking about it. Everybody started waking up. Not with any real solutions, but, you know, waking up. So you had a debate last night. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't watch all of it, but I had some people who did. I mean, what is going on? This is the problem. This is the tragedy. The Democratic Party has gone off the cliff. The Democratic Party has a separate standard for anti-Semitism. You know, you don't speak out, you don't stand up, you don't do the right thing. The BDS movement. right? You're all familiar with boycott, divestment, sanction. There are 194 countries in the world. Maybe 195. Not sure. 193, 194. 195 countries in the world. How many BDS movements are there in America, in this world, directed against different countries that are violating the human rights and the civil rights of people? You think China is violating the civil rights of those Muslims, over 1 million of them who are being held in concentration camps? You think so? Is there a BDS movement directed against China? No. Is there a BDS movement directed against Russia? There is no BDS movement directed against any country except one nation in this world, and that is the State of Israel. That's called anti-Semitism. Nothing else. One single country, the Jewish people, a country surrounded by enemies on every side. You know that. I've been in Israel when missiles were flying in the north, in the south at different times. I know what it means to run for cover, because you get that warning of about 15, 20 seconds, and you have to run for cover. The only BDS movement is directed against the Jewish state, which you know is constantly on alert, has to constantly live dealing with the threats directed against the Jewish state. But the BDS movement, that's okay. How many members of the United States Congress? Quite a few, besides the ones you're familiar with. They support BDS. And by the way, Nancy Pelosi herself said about 2 months ago that to support BDS is anti-Semitism. So why doesn't she do something about the fact that her own party, you have all these people supporting BDS? So it's very sad what has happened to the Democratic Party. It's not the Democratic Party that anybody remembers. It's out of control. And the only way to send a message with everything that's going on in this country, and it's scary. It's scary. I can't tell you how many people ask me, write to me, email me, are we living in a pre-Nazi Germany period? Americans asking such a question about our great country? People saying that to me? I'm sure you've heard that. 3 years ago, who would ever have discussed anything about the future of this country in terms of the Jewish community? Today it's not the same. It's changed because of what's going on. So ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats can't say anything nice about our president. They can't. They can't. Because if they say anything nice, you get crucified. You're right, you get crucified. The fact of life is, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump has been the best president ever in terms of the relationship of the United States and Israel, and it doesn't even come close. I mean, it's a fact. Yeah, everybody. This president has been the best friend ever. Well, Ronald Reagan was a great friend, but nobody compares to Donald Trump. No one. That is a fact of life. And the things that he's done, from recognizing Jerusalem, which every Democratic and Republican president prior to him. You know what's interesting about Donald Trump? That almost everything that he is committed to doing on every level, it's very interesting. If you really think about it, let's forget about Democrat, Republican. Let's just talk, tacos. Bottom line. Bottom line. This president, everything that he committed, slowly but surely, I don't think any president has a record like him. I'm telling you. And I've liked many other presidents, but no one has a record like him. Look, I know that Biden, in the last debate, I saw him on TV, where he was asked about the economy. And he insulted all the people of this country. Because his answer was, we don't know that it isn't good. You get it? We don't understand. We're stupid. We don't know. When our paychecks, we're making more money. Our wages are increasing slowly but surely. The unemployment rate is at 50 freaking years. I mean, you go on and on about the economy. You know, I remember a couple of months ago on CNN, MSNBC, I remember they were all praying. You remember there was a little period of time they began to talk about the economy going down, then maybe the beginning of a... Remember that? They were praying. They don't pray that much in the Democratic Party, but they were all praying at that point because, oh, we got to get rid of this president. And meanwhile, everything is going incredibly well in terms of the economy, which, by the way, at the end of the day, is one of the most important things. And by the way, who benefits by this? I wish the president would talk more about it. I intend to do it all over Florida in the course of this year, wherever I go. I don't want to talk to Republicans. I want to talk to Democrats. I want to talk to independents. I want to have a conversation with them about the facts of life. I don't have any personal, like I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. No, the facts, don't confuse me with the facts. It's something that a lot of people will tell you. But things are going extremely well, and the people that are benefiting more than anyone else are people in the black community. The unemployment rate in the black community is the lowest it's been, again, in 30, 40, 50 years in the Latino community. More women are working in this country than men right now. These are amazing, amazing statistics. So you can go on to almost every single issue. And President Trump has been a superstar. Let me share a story with you, and I have a relationship with the president. In fact, just last week he tweeted thanking me for what I said about him on Fox and Friends, which I do very often these days. But a while ago, in Jackson Heights, Queens. How many people know Jackson Heights? There you go. Okay. Jackson Heights. There was a Nazi living in Jackson Heights. His name was Pelé. Yeah. I'll remind you of the story because it got national attention. I was involved for over 12 years fighting to get rid of this guy, to throw him out of the country, send him back to Germany, Poland, Ukraine. Not in this country. A man who worked in a concentration camp involved in the murder of Jews shouldn't be living in Jackson Heights as a free man walking the streets. I remember my mother, when she was alive, taking her and other Holocaust survivors to his street. And we had a campaign that went on 12 years. We had the Bush administration. We had the Obama administration. Everybody said, yeah, we want to get rid of... If you're wondering, how did this guy end up in this country? If he's a Nazi, how did he end up in this country? Because when he came into this country as an immigrant, and, they fill out the papers, right? And they said, what did you do in the old home back in Europe? He said, I worked on a farm. Okay, no problem. So he got into this country, and it was only literally 12.5 years later that it was discovered that this was this Nazi who was living, and it took a long, long time. And I remember, I will never forget, you got a lot of great moments in your life. I'll never forget, I just came home from Israel, one of my trips. I had strep, and I was in bed. And I was involved at the White House with the Justice Department to push. And I felt, if any president will make this happen, it will be Donald Trump. I just knew it inside. At 4 o'clock in the morning, this night, I had just come back from Israel the day before. My son-in-law was a doctor, said, you got strep, here's antibiotics. 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from the people in the White House. Pelé is being removed from his home in Jackson Heights. He's on his way to Germany, out of this country. That's what President Trump did, something that no one else did. Add that to your repertoire. And there are so many things like that. This administration, the president, his daughter, his son-in-law, Pompeo, these are amazing friends, and they know who the good guys are. They know who the good guys are. The good guys are the people of Israel. The people of Israel want peace. They want an end to the violence. They want an end, going to a pizza store and having to worry about it blowing up. getting on a bus and having to worry about that bus being blown up. I remember my kids were studying in Israel during the Intifada. And every time there was a bomb went off, which was almost on a daily basis, my kids were in Jerusalem and I was in New York, and my heart fell out until I knew that my kids were safe, because things were happening all the time. The people of Israel want peace. Different prime ministers in the past have tried to make the most incredible concessions, but there's no partner for peace. There's no partner for peace. How can you have a partner for peace that if you murder Jews, we take care of your family for life? Who ever heard of such a thing? Your kids go to school, right? Your kids go to school. You should see what Palestinian textbooks are filled with. Hate of the Jewish people. Goebbels of Nazi Germany, the propaganda minister of that, would be proud of what the Palestinians produce for their children, so that the next generation can hate the Jewish people. So, ladies and gentlemen, with God's help, there's a lot to do. We've got to be careful. We can't in any way think, oh, it's not going to be a problem, the president will win. You never know what's going to happen. We've got to do everything in the world to turn people on. In places like Florida, there are 4 or 5 states that are absolutely critical to the president. The United States of America needs 4 more years of this great Dr. Donald Trump. They need 4 more years. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've touched the surface of a lot of different things. And I am a Democrat, and people ask me all the time, in almost every interview, why are you still a Democrat? Truth is, I really don't have a great answer. But let me tell you, it does work, because I do get on television a lot, more and more. And I'm always a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. The problem is the Democratic Party. And it is much more effective for me to support the president, who I have a relationship, and his administration. Doesn't mean that I like every little thing that he says. Doesn't mean that. But the guy has been an incredible leader of this country. What just happened with Iran, ladies and gentlemen. I'm watching this. And I have Rahmanis. Let me explain. I have pity on the Democrats. They want things not to go right, because they want to win the next election. They're terrified of the possibility that Donald Trump may actually be president for another 4 years. They're terrified. They're terrified, and they will do everything in the world. So we get rid of a butcher. We get rid of somebody who is responsible for hundreds and hundreds of Americans being murdered. We get rid of somebody whose entire life is devoted to creating mischief, to spreading terror all over the Middle East. He walks around like he's the king of the mountain. He's not afraid of anything, because he knows that no president prior has ever seriously addressed the issue. Why didn't we get rid of this guy a long time ago? A lot more people would be alive if we removed this guy many years ago. So, so you have Democrats, they're just looking, searching for something to say to be critical of the president. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am so thrilled to be here tonight with this amazing group of people. And I intend to spend a lot of time in Florida, but again, I believe almost everyone here supports the president. By the way, I wouldn't have the audacity to ask anyone to get up who doesn't. Okay? But there's a lot of work to be done. And Donald Trump, if you're honest, if you just forget any of the titles, Democrat, Republican, Independent, just look at the things that he has done. Look at the things that he has promised, and where are the accomplishments? And I don't think we've had a president in the last 50 years who has been more effective in terms of accomplishing the commitments that he made. I mean, even the thing with China that was just signed, the trade agreement with China, it's not done yet, it's not finished. But this president had the guts to face the Chinese and say that our relationship is an unfair one and we're going to make it better. And that's what he did. So on and on and on. So to each and every one of you, God bless each and every one of you. And with God's help, we need to be involved. I created an organization called Americans Against Anti-Semitism that has really, we can't keep up with the demand of people all over the country who want to be involved. I want to play a role. I want to support you guys. People who are literally supporting us financially on the internet. We're hiring more and more people. And the thing about me, check me out on the internet a little more. You know, I appeared on 5 Fox programs, or 6, last week. And one of the issues that came up was that the governor and mayor of New York, as you know, they blamed the president. I said before, they blamed the president for the anti-Semitism in New York. And I got on television, I said, that is ridiculous. That is outrageous. What is the anti-Semitism being perpetrated in New York by people mostly from the minority community? We see who they are, but no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to have that discussion. Why is it happening? Where's the hate coming from? Who's instigating people to go out and beat up on people and do much worse? And they were blaming the president. I mean, de Blasio said it was the alternate right. Not one person involved in any of these crimes was even white. And I defended the president, and the president actually tweeted thanking me for doing that. So, ladies and gentlemen, support Americans Against Anti-Semitism. I have a couple of cards left. All you got to do is go americansaa.org and be part of what we're doing. I know a lot of people here. In fact, I met someone, I hope he's still here. Throughout my life as a Democrat, I've supported a lot of Republicans. I supported Rudy Giuliani, in 1988 when he lost to David Hikind. No Democrat supported him in 1988, and of course I supported him 4 years later. And I was appointed to the transition team involved in picking commissioners. And one of the friends that I made at that time, and I just met him tonight for the first time in maybe 20 years, Bill Diamond, still here?
Yes, sir.
Where are you? That's a superstar right there. Great, great guy. Former commissioner in New York in the Giuliani administration. We know each other from that point. I supported people like George Pataki, Republican, against Mario Cuomo. I supported Al D'Amato against the Jewish Attorney General who was running against him, Bob Abrams. Do you know why? In all of those races, it was after the Crown Heights riots. Do you remember the Crown Heights riots? That was an accident that turned into a pogrom in Crown Heights. An accident, a car, a young black person, not Leonard Cohen, he was the one accused later of killing somebody, but a young person was run over. 3 days in Crown Heights, there were riots. Out of control. The mayor at the time, David Hikind, said, we have to let the rioters vent. You got to get out of your system, you know, and then everything will be okay, instead of telling the police to do their job. So, the next 3 races in New York, at press conferences, with every TV station, every newspaper, I got up and I supported Al D'Amato in 91, I supported Giuliani in 92, and I supported George Pataki in 93, and won all of those races because it was the right thing to do. And the right thing to do for America, if you care about the future of this country, there is no choice. I didn't even talk about the Democratic candidates. I mean, that is an absolute disaster for America. I mean, that's a whole discussion if you look at the people on the Democratic side. Anti-Semitism, they couldn't give it 2 minutes at the debate. I mean, what chutzpah, what audacity. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 minutes about Jews being attacked in this country on a daily basis. Jews being murdered, Jews being stabbed. We didn't deserve 2 minutes so that America could hear the answers of Bernie Sanders and Biden and Warren. We didn't deserve it, right? We did not deserve for anti-Semitism to be raised at these Democratic debates. Supporting the Democratic Party in 2020? You got to be out of your mind. Thank you very much. Love you.